Thank you. Okay, we're ready to open up and let people pile in. Okay. Great. We're going to give everyone a couple more minutes to join. And we're going to start soon. Thank you everyone for joining. We're going to start in about a minute. We're just allowing people to enter the room. Okay. Great. I'm going to start by introducing myself, a little bit of a background, and introduce the other host. It's an amazing panel, so thank you everyone for joining today. I'm very excited to help spread the education and message that we are trying to give over. So my name is Bracha Banian. I'm a family nurse practitioner. I am the CEO of IV Drips, an IV on-demand company, and another company called Hello Dose, which is a concierge handheld weight loss via GLP-1 company. And what we try to do is we help people learn how to use GLP-1s like Ozempic as a tool versus a quick fix. My background as a nurse practitioner has been in family medicine and emergency medicine, primarily started with doing and having an IV practice. And then I gained about 15 pounds during COVID. And it was the first time in my life that I struggled to lose weight, which took a turn and gave me a new eye-opening to the journey people have on weight loss that I never fully understood. And I will admit, judged people. And until I was in that place in my life, I didn't really understand the journey of weight loss. What I experienced was very eye-opening, and I went on semaglutide, which is like Ozempic, and it helped me lose weight. And through that, I have been on a journey ever since then, trying to spread education and awareness about how people can use these medications, not only for weight loss, but for many other reasons. And so we're going to be talking about GLP-1s today, like Ozempic, semaglutide, Mounjaro, tirzepatide. And so that is my background. The other panelist here is Marianne Cohen. Marianne Cohen is a psychotherapist since 1972. So she has a lot of experience in emotional eating. She specializes in emotional eating. She coined the term emotional eating. And so I am very happy and pleased to have her. She's on the board of National Eating Disorder Association. And we have a couple of patients in common. We have been doing amazing work together, which I'm really excited about as we're going to be talking about a little bit in the webinar. And she's revolutionary in her space. I'm also going to introduce Danielle, who is a dietitian for over 16 years, helping people have sustainable weight loss, not only just to lose weight, but also doing it in a way that's sustainable. She is someone who has been open to GLP-1s and help patients navigate through that, since diet is so important when you're on a GLP-1. And I am really happy to have her on board and a part of our team, because what she is doing is revolutionary. The people that are helping educate individuals on this, what they're doing is revolutionary because it is really like taking the first few steps to helping change the world. And so that's what we're here. I'm just going to talk a little bit about our first topic. And before I do that, I'm just going to have Marianne and Danielle just say a couple words, a little bit about your background, how you got involved before we start the topic of habits. So Marianne, I'll pass it to you.
Well, I am an author also of 3 books on the treatment of eating disorders. And I was very skeptical about these new weight loss medications because as an eating disorder therapist, I also believe that diets don't work. I believe that people need to be comfortable and have body acceptance no matter what their weight is. So it's been a little bit of a controversy for me, and also we'll talk about it later, other colleagues in the field, because Mark Twain said, the worst loneliness is to feel uncomfortable with yourself. And people who are overweight often feel uncomfortable with themselves and are entitled to make the decision to try to lose weight and get more comfortable. So I've been skeptical, but then I met Bracha, and she's been really helpful. And I've talked before in our webinar that one of my patients who had been bulimic for a very long time, 12 hours after she took her first injection, was no longer bulimic. What was interesting, Bracha, is I listened to another webinar of yours, and the woman there also said, 12 hours after my first injection, I no longer had the food noise. So there's something about 12 that seems like it's a very interesting number here. So I'll talk more later.
Thank you.
Yeah, over the past year, I've just adopted the mindset that we have to learn more about these medications because 2 things. We know that they're not going away, and we know that they're helping a lot of people, right? So that's been my goal over this past year is as I'm working with more clients and members in our program on GLP-1s is to learn how to help them. These medications are just another tool in our toolbox for people that need them. I have a lot of methods and strategies to help people lose weight and, overcome overeating or whatever that might be, but those methods don't work on everyone. So I'm excited to talk about that now.
Thank you. So the first topic I'm going to talk about is habits. How do GLP-1 change your habits, or how do they affect your habits? I'm going to talk about it on a medical aspect, and then we're going to hear about it, how we navigate through that through our emotions and navigate through that through nutrition. GLP-1s work in our brain and our gut. They're not just gut drugs, meaning they're not just here to help us lose weight. They're actually working in our brain. And the important thing to understand is that you could use GLP-1s. And when I say GLP-1s, that means Ozempic, semaglutide, tirzepatide, Mounjaro. You could use these medications actually as a tool, or you can use it as a quick fix. They have the ability to do both, and how you use it is very dependent on you and your team of medical professionals and dietitians who help you. That's what it's going to come down to. How are you being coached? How are you being monitored? When you go on these medications, your dose matters very much in terms of how much control you are giving the medication and how much control you are getting back. So sometimes we're dealing with things where we go on these medications because we're losing a sense of control over the choices that we make, whether it's towards, binge eating or just snacking too much or can't control portion size. So we're losing some sense of control, and GLP-1s give us a sense back of control. But if you go on a dose that's not good for you, you basically give all the medication all the control to the medication, where you're never feeling hungry. And unfortunately, when that happens, you're not in the ability, or you're not in the right place to build new habits, which means you're just using a drug to shut off your food noise instead of using a drug to change your behaviors. Changing behaviors and habits is really the power of this medication. And that is what we help people understand. And that's how we use this medication at our company, IV Drips and Hello Dose, to allow people to use this medication to build habits. Now, Danielle, we know that everyone has different habits. So the topic of the conversation is the candy bowl. There are some people that when they put out a candy bowl in their house, it's gone a few hours later. And there are other people that have it lying around for months. Why is it? Give us a little bit of a background of, from a nutritional standpoint. One is, why is it, and how do we learn to navigate with the habits on nutrition, and some advice when we're trying to build new habits, whether we're on a GLP-1 or not? How do we build new habits around better nutrition?
So yeah, this is something I'm going to talk a lot about this evening. But we titled the webinar "The Candy Bowl" because I have a candy bowl that sits on our kitchen countertop. And I will post about this often on my social media, how my kids have learned to not obsess over candy. Candy has lost its appeal because it's always sitting on the counter. It's always there. It's not going anywhere. They're not going to get candy once or twice a year to where they overeat and they feel awful. It's always there. And I am of that mindset for pretty much all foods in my household. Everything's available. You just have to learn which foods we need to eat more often and which foods maybe we don't want to eat as often. Maybe they don't have as much nutrition or for whatever reason. But it's all about starting with your children. I firmly believe in that. Teaching them that all foods fit. We might just want to eat these certain foods more often. And this is how we can set up, to develop those healthy habits into adulthood. Well, on my last video where I talked about the candy bowl, I got several comments from women who said, how am I supposed to teach my kids this? How am I supposed to put a candy bowl out when I myself am obsessing over it? I have not developed these strategies. And to be honest, I paused. This really made me think, I don't know. I have strategies that I teach our clients and members, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But I really think, I want to toss this over to Mary Ann now, because this is her wheelhouse. So what would you say to a patient or a client who says, how am I supposed to teach my kids this habit, or, that candy is okay in moderation if I can't have the candy out?
Well, it's a good question and a complicated answer. The reason it's complicated is that everybody's eating struggle is unique as a fingerprint. So what may work for Sharon won't work for Tony. And so it's wonderful that with your children, you are giving them the message that candy is not a forbidden food. But the mothers that you're talking to grew up internalizing, don't eat too much, you're going to gain weight. And I think women particularly have internalized the message that gaining weight is probably the worst thing you could possibly do in life. So you're asking a good question. How do we go back a generation? You're creating children who are not feeling deprivation. And when you don't feel deprivation, you're free to pick and choose according to what your stomach is telling you, what your hunger is telling you. But people who are of the previous generation and the previous generation and the previous generation, I've talked about how I work with people in 4 generations who all have eating problems. It's not so easy for them. And they may feel the candy bowl is too tempting and not going to work for them. Some may learn how to make peace with it, how to get to the point where their stomach will direct them. I want this now. I don't want this now. Because ultimately, what we're trying to get people in touch with is, what does your stomach say? What do you need? What are you hungry for? And we talk about stomach hunger as opposed to mouth hunger. Mouth hunger is snacking, binging, because the sensation, the urge comes from the mouth. Stomach hunger is more about physical hunger. So it's a complicated question, and it depends on the particular woman. I'm going to say woman, but let's include men here also. You had an interesting man on one of your webinars that I was watching. He was very cute. So I don't know. Some women may feel it to be provocative, that the candy is calling to them, and then when they get there, they're saying, no, I shouldn't have it. While other women might embrace this as freedom. For the first time in my life, I'm free. And if I'm free to eat it, then I can choose not to eat it.
Exactly.
I'm free to eat it, then I can choose not to eat it. But we're all on a continuum. All of us are on a continuum, from restriction and dieting and rigid mentality to binging and overeating, and the sky's the limit. And somewhere in the middle, hopefully, with the help of GLP-1s, to come to some sort of balance. And, Bracha talks about the pause factor and how these medications help us to pause so we don't grab for the first thing that crosses our path and stimulates mouth hunger.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, Danielle, was there anything else you wanted to add on in terms of reaching for the candy bowl?
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with Mary Ann. It's so easy for me to give the advice of have a high protein, high fiber meal, and they'll see me if I do like a what I had for lunch video or something, they'll see me reach for one Oreo or like one mini Snickers after lunch. And again, the comments are, well, I wouldn't be able to eat just one. How do you do that? And it's, going back to, well, I had a high protein, high fiber meal. I felt satisfied already. I'm not relying on this candy or Oreos as my main source of a meal, but for some people, it doesn't matter if they're satisfied or full. They're still going to overeat on these hyper palatable foods. So it's definitely really difficult.
Yeah. And I appreciate how it's so different for every person. And I think the first step for someone who is struggling with this, and honestly, a lot of people do. I personally have times that I struggle with it where if I'm feeling a little bit more anxious, I'm eating more than I need to. But I think the first step is realizing, with the help of GLP-1s, I started noticing, okay, but why am I doing this? I'm because I'm feeling anxious. So identifying what your habits are and then identifying why you're doing it is the first step. Before you start, let me change this habit. Let me break this habit. You know what? From now on, I'm going to eat one candy and that's it. Like, that's a very logical decision, and that usually doesn't work, especially if you're not on a GLP-1, because it's an emotionally driven action. And so understanding the first step about where it's stemming from and what you're feeling when you're eating, I think is a very very important step number one before you adapt new habits. Another thing I wanted to talk about was just
Can I just jump in? Can I just jump in?
Yeah.
So I have a little slogan: awareness plus action equals results. And this is what you were saying, to recognize the first step, if we're going to change any behavior, is to become aware. And I'm going to talk later about the 3 different kinds of eating, people who eat, what motivates them. But awareness about, and this brings into triggers too, awareness about, why am I reaching for the candy? Am I hungry? No. Am I angry, lonely, tired? You know, the slogan from the 12-step program is HALT. Don't get too hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, which I like a lot. But first is awareness. So I cannot change my action until I step back and become more aware. And so it's awareness plus action equals results.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes. Yes. With almost every aspect of life. Yes. Thank you.
Right.
True. Love that. So another thing that GLP-1s help us with is impulses, triggers, impulsive decisions that we're making through addictive behaviors. It's not spoken about so much in what GLP-1s do. Most people look at it as a weight loss drug, but I look at it as a medication that helps with impulses in places that we find addictive, which is one of the reasons why I really, really love this medication, because it's not just that it helps you lose weight, it changes your brain. It doesn't make you feel less of a desire to have protein, because no one's addicted to protein.
Right.
It makes you have less of a desire for alcohol, smoking, sugar. So it's affecting something in our brain, that's controlling the impulses and causing a delayed reaction, of instant gratification. So usually certain things we do in our life, whether we're certain people will, look at the candy bowl and I know I'm going to feel better if I just have that piece of chocolate. Let me just quickly have it so I could just get that quick dopamine hit. So whether some person thinks about it through eating a chocolate, another person may have that with purging, another person will have that with a cigarette, lighting a cigarette, another person will have that with drinking alcohol. There's so many different triggers that someone has. And GLP-1s, what they do is they kind of control that for you when you're on the right dose, when you're not too low, not too high. They allow you to pause and make different decisions. So whether we're on a GLP-1 or not, let's say we're in that space where we're learning to control our triggers. Danielle, can you tell us a little bit about, in terms of like nutrition, what are the advice that you could give us for people? Let's say someone is on a GLP-1, they are having less triggers now, but they want to also learn to manage it. So on the right dose, you're still understand that this is something, it becomes more logically driven now. You understand, like, okay, I'm always have like tons of candies that are on the shelf. Now I don't really need it. But what are different things that they could know to do? Now, let me replace it with something, or give us like some tips. How do we start helping and improving our nutrition while we're on a weight loss journey for things that we find just this impulse have?
So I would say a majority of members, clients come to me and they say a lot of the same things. And that is, I do really well during the day. I don't eat bad, which the first thing I say is we don't say good or bad. Okay, that's a whole nother lesson. But they'll say, I do really well during the day, but at night I overeat. I'm watching TV, I'm sitting on the couch. It's more so habit at this point. But the majority of their calories are in those evening, nighttime hours. So then they wake up, they're not very hungry because they overate the night before. So it's this vicious cycle. And so when they tell me this, the first thing I tell them is, okay, I want you to start eating a breakfast that has protein and fiber. So I'll give them examples and they're like, well, what if I'm not hungry? I'll say, start small, start with something, a Greek yogurt with berries. And then as the day goes on, make sure that you're fueling your body accordingly, because when they say, oh, I'm doing well during the day, they're probably not eating enough, right? They think, oh, I'm doing well because I'm not eating enough, but that's not doing well to me. To me, doing well is fueling your body with enough protein and enough fiber. Protein and fiber containing foods they're very satiating. So if we're getting enough protein, enough fiber, enough calories to fuel our body during the day, then that nighttime overeating is much less decreased. So this is what I've helped a lot of my clients with, just learning to kind of switch that. We're going to meet your protein goals. We're going to meet your fiber goals. And they've realized that at the end of the day, they're satisfied, and we'll discuss techniques as well. If you're used to just eating in front of the TV, maybe try, an adult coloring book or, something else to like get your mind off of snacking at that time, if it's a habit. And as we all know, things that we do over time become habits and eventually our new lifestyle. So I would say getting enough protein, fiber, fueling your body enough during the day. Now, as I mentioned earlier, these tips do not work for everyone. There are people who will continue to overeat. Again, even they might be full, they might not physically be hungry, but they're just, this is, what they can't control it. So, this is where GLP-1s come in because, as we all know, that term food noise, pretty much anyone on a GLP-1 has told me that they have decreased the food noise. I'm able to make those better decisions. I'm able to eat enough protein and fiber and avoid the nighttime overeating. So, Marianne, again, I want to pass it to you, for any of what other strategies would you recommend? So let's say, I have someone who's like, Danielle told me to eat protein and fiber, but it's not working. I'm still overeating. What do I do?
Great question. And I completely agree with you that the majority of people who come to me are nighttime, evening eaters, and they undereat during the day. So I'm 100% in agreement with you. However, nighttime has emotional stress. We let our hair down. The structure of the day has ebbed. Now we're faced with ourselves, our loneliness, our disgruntlement with our husbands, our children, the people in our lives, anger. The minute we let our hair down at the end of the day, emotions come up for us. And it goes back to what I was saying before. We have to be aware. If eating enough, fueling yourself, you said, Danielle, during the day is not doing the trick for nighttime, then we have to ask ourselves, what is going on at night? I can tell you some people don't want to have sex and they overeat and make themselves feel uncomfortable instead. Some people are afraid to go to sleep. They may have some traumatic thing that happened to them. Some people are anxious about the next day. All sorts of emotional things come up. Now, I'm a therapist, so I love that GLP-1s are dialing down the food noise, but we have to recognize that food is a coping device. It's an emotional coping device. So if we're taking that away from people, even more emotions are possibly going to be surging up. We're asking people to deal with emotions without the comfort of food, which may be more difficult. So I tell people that, and they feel understood. They feel that it's a valid reason to have more struggle at night. And then we have to identify what feelings they are having. You know, one of the things that I say to people in therapy is, what is the next issue that's going to come up for you if you lose the weight you want to lose, if the GLP-1 has dialed down your food noise? And it's amazing what people say. One woman said, divorcing my husband, but I don't want to talk about it. She knew right away the next issue on the back burner. Someone else said, having to deal with my grandfather's sexual abuse of me when I was a child, but I don't want to deal with it. So I think we have to appreciate that food is a comfort, and that we need to respect that people have found ways to comfort themselves, and now we have to help them find other ways.
Absolutely. Wow. Yeah, I never thought of it that way, as at the end of the day, you know, you're letting your hair down and the emotions come out.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And we see it, I guess there is, in terms of the amount of people that struggle during the day in the morning versus at night, and as drastically more at night, and great tips. And I do see that also when people are on GLP-1s, most people don't understand it's not about eating less, it's about eating right. A lot of times, yes, there is an aspect of sometimes portion control. That is also, it's a separate topic. A lot of times it's just certain individuals, when they're on GLP-1s, they come to me or one of their nurse practitioners, and they're like, I'm not eating that much, like I'm not losing weight, what should I do? And we go over their diet, and it's like they're not eating enough, and their body's just holding on to things, and because it's almost like starving, and they think that they need to eat less to lose weight, but actually your body's just like holding on for dear life. And I'm like, we need to up your protein so that as you work out in the gym, you could actually store that as muscle, so your body could build more muscle, so you could start really burning more fat. But the answer isn't eating less, it's just eating right. And that also gives a more sense of control when you're eating throughout the day, or just not waiting to a certain point where you're like unleashing and starving. So giving yourself fuel throughout the day, whatever that is. If it means that instead of one meal, it's 2 meals, or it's 2 meals and a snack somewhere, or 3 meals, whatever that means for you. But you have to hit, your protein levels. I've actually read a certain study that spoke about people who get the gastric sleeve. And a good percentage of people who get gastric sleeve end up having another sort of addiction, which is coming to prove that food is an addiction. And it's the cheapest and the most accessible type of addiction, right? That you can have from all different sort of addictions. And in a certain way, the most socially acceptable addiction from other addictions. And so there is an aspect of comfort that we're getting from food. Now, when you go on a GLP-1, it's not, we don't look at it as cheating, because it doesn't fix the problem of the emotion you still have to deal with. But at least it gives you almost a more opportunity to sit face to face with that problem and not start thinking about the food anymore. You start actually thinking about the problem. And it also changes the way your brain thinks. So that's kind of like why I love it, in terms of when you pair it up with proper nutrition, proper therapy, proper medical dosing, you're actually able to see results at a much faster rate. Yeah.
When someone tells me that, well, I'm not eating a lot, but I'm not losing weight. If someone is eating below their maintenance needs, they're going to lose weight. If you're in a calorie deficit, you're going to lose weight. What's happening here is that eating 1,000 calories per day is not sustainable. So what's happening is that there's often, in my case, my members we track our calories and macros. There's often untracked food, because 1,000 calories per day, 1,100 calories is not sustainable for most people. So what happens is we're overeating at a later time, but they might think, well, I'm not eating that much. What's going on? I'm not losing weight. You're not realizing all of those untracked calories, or all those calories you had over the weekend or at night. And this is why I believe in tracking, or just, writing down what you're eating, even if it's for a short period of time, even if it's for 7 days. Create that awareness so you can visually see, oh wow, I am not eating enough protein. Oh wow, this dinner had way more calories than I thought. And then you can make adjustments based on that data. But we know that tracking is not for everyone. But for people that see it as a tool to create awareness, it's really helpful for that.
Yeah.
I want to say one thing, and maybe Danielle, as a nutritionist, you can respond to this. I'm very rebellious. Most of my patients are very rebellious. If you tell me that I can't have rice or a potato or kasha with my dinner, I'm going to lose the connection about when I'm full from it. Because if I have in my mind that I shouldn't be eating this, then I'm going to want to eat it more. And I had a mother who told me what I should eat and what I shouldn't eat. And it made me an emotional eater growing up because I lost the connection between hunger and fullness. That my mother weighed 85 pounds. And as I said before, I weighed 85 pounds for about 10 minutes in my life. 10 minutes. There is rebellious nature where forbidden fruit is sweetest. And tell us, someone said, well, cut down your carbs by 50%. If someone told me that, it would make me very anxious.
It would make me very unsatisfied as well, because I love carbs.
Right.
Carbs are, our bodies run on carbohydrates. And so this is why when I started counting macros, this was about 10 years ago, I fell in love with it because no foods are off limits. I can have whatever I want as long as I stay within my calorie goal, protein, and fiber. So people will see me in my videos eating rice, pasta, and it's bread. Oh, bread is a huge one. Well, I thought bread was bad. So then I have to go into, okay, there's no good or bad foods. Not every meal also has to be a, high protein, high fiber. Meet your goal for the day. This is what I tell people. But you are never going to lose weight or reach any sort of fitness goal sustainably without including the foods that you love. I include ice cream every night, even if it's like 100-calorie yasso bar, whatever it might be. I have dessert every night. And I will fit that into my plan. And so that's what I teach my members. It's not about low carb. It's not about restricting any food groups. But the trick is, again, we are tracking what we're eating. An alternative, let's say someone doesn't want to track, and I totally understand that, is you could teach someone how to make, a balanced plate where, okay, your protein portion is about a quarter to a third of the plate, whatever it might be. Your starchy carbohydrate is a quarter, whatever that might be. And you can have potatoes, rice, pasta, breads. Half of your plate is vegetables. So again, they're visually seeing that, okay, these are the foods that I want to eat more of, but nothing is off limits. And I think that if we can teach that to our kids, our clients, it's really just going to help people develop a much healthier relationship with all food, because this is life. There's foods that we love. You have to incorporate them.
Yeah. Thank you.
It's not about perfection. There may be some perfect, but we're human. We're human.
Yeah. I'm Italian, so if someone told me I couldn't have pasta, I'd tell them where to go.
Well, I'm Jewish. If someone told me I couldn't have bread, I'll tell them where to go.
There you go. And I think the whole point is sustainable weight loss, which is why we are all about the right dose, because I always tell patients, if you go on these medications and you're on a dose, and I always go back to the dose because that's really the true metric in really having a healthy journey versus a non-healthy journey. When you're on a dose that's so high, you won't feel hungry. and you'll start losing weight and you'll think, wow, it's awesome. But the truth is that it's never going to be sustainable, because if you're on a dose you're not eating enough food to sustain it. So I always say whatever you're doing on it, you must be able to sustain it off of it. So if whatever you're eating on a GLP-1 on a day-to-day basis, can you sustain that lifestyle off of it? And if the answer is, oh my gosh, absolutely not, I would not be able to do it, then that's a problem. That means it's not sustainable. And with everything, you need to be eating things that are sustainable. When you're on a GLP-1, you're able to make decisions through logic, which you can't always do when you're not on a GLP-1. So use that time while you're on it, make logical decisions about how you want to live your life, whether it's the lifestyle, the emotion aspect that you're working on, or the nutrition aspect that you're working on. Use that time when the window of opportunity that works for you, that your decisions are logically driven, that when you go off of it, if you plan on going off of it, or you go to a maintenance dose, that you're able to sustain all of those different habits and nutrition things that you implemented while you were on it. So sustainable weight loss, sustainable lifestyle is so important. It's like a very key component to the weight loss part. Like, you can't forget about the sustainable part, because a lot of people could lose weight. It's just not a lot of people could sustain it.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. And they have to eat enough protein and enough fiber, but the protein is essential as well. You know, and that's really where I come into play is, okay, aim for this much, you know, at least 20 to 30 grams with each meal, depending how many meals you're eating. But if you want to lose the weight and maintain your muscle mass, then you have to eat enough protein, or you're not gonna, you know, you're not gonna be pleased with the outcome if you don't. So.
Yeah. And on my journey learning about this, you know, as I started losing weight through a GLP-1 and trying for 2 years before and I couldn't, and as my journey learning about this, I started learning about protein. And I will say that as a medical professional, as a nurse practitioner, I had no idea how many grams of protein things had. And throughout this journey that I've had the past few years, I've learned so much because I had to help others. And so most people actually do not have the knowledge about how many grams of protein should I get? What does a gram of protein, how does that look like? And it's so important to get that knowledge. Like, that's knowledge that we should understand what we're eating, how many grams of protein am I eating a day, and what should I actually be eating? So that's so important. I have one more topic to talk about, and then we will be answering questions. So you can put in the chat box or the Q&A, and we'll go over some questions. If anyone has any questions, we're going to be talking about them in a few minutes. You can ask general, specific. The last conversation that I want to talk about is opposition. GLP-1s are a very, very controversial topic. You have people who love it and people who hate it. Not a lot of people are in between. And so, I mean, I have that in the medical field, where we see a lot of opposition, people who are like, this is very bad for you, or even just, you know, talking to people about it. There's a lot of people that don't really feel like the drug is a good thing. It's cheating. There's no studies on it. Let's just say, so there's many different things that come up when we talk about GLP-1s, and you know, we try to help educate people to realize how long it's been out for, since 2009, and how many studies are on it, and the different research things, and what it's being used for. Obviously, way more than just weight loss, but impulses, binge eating, bulimia, addiction with alcohol, smoking, inflammatory, IBS, Crohn's, psoriasis, I mean, menopausal weight gain, brain fog. There's so many other things these medications are being used for. But I just want to hear both perspectives. So Danielle, like, can you give me both perspectives? Like, why are you seeing a lot of dietitians, nutritionists, health coaches? What's the pushback? Can you give me an understanding of both parties?
Yeah, so a few things I've seen is, you know, I've had I've seen a lot of support from nutrition coaches, dietitians. I've also seen a lot of, well, I didn't need them to lose weight, so why do you?
Right.
And that was hurtful. You know, that felt, I'm not on one. I can't sympathize or relate, but we need to be sympathetic that not everyone has the same tool or needs the same tool in their toolbox. And as practitioners, you know, I would have hoped that we would have more sympathy, that just because I didn't need one to lose 30 pounds after having babies doesn't mean that my neighbor might not need some help. You know, I have loved ones who are on these medications and are doing things and getting results that they've never had before. And so I think that sympathy and understanding and acceptance really goes a long way with these medications. So, you know, my goal, as I mentioned, is just to continue to learn more because we know that they're helping a lot of people and they're not going away. So I think over time, more, you know, nutrition coaches, dietitians that are opposed will hopefully come on board, because I think that's going to be our only option. So yeah, but it definitely makes me a little sad when I hear things like that, you know, because we need to understand that what works for one does not work for another.
Yeah. Marianne, so in the emotional eating therapist world, can you give us a little bit about both perspectives? I mean, I would assume most people are giving you pushback more than people that are pro it. But just can you
Right.
give us perspective on it and your thoughts?
Therapists deal with feelings and emotions. Many therapists make the assumption that if I can help you make peace with the emotions that trigger you to turn to food, then you'll be good. I've never believed that. I've always believed that behavior must be linked with psychological meaning. So I think many therapists, dare I say, are threatened at the idea that weight and food, but it's not all emotional. They're threatened by the fact that it's not all emotional. This is how we've been trained. And that's what I think the majority of the pushback is. Also, we haven't been taught. I mean, I've sought out my own training with Bracha, with the book she recommended, with the Ozempic Revolution book. You talked about the Magic Pill book. I've taken another webinar. You have it right here to show us. So I looked into that. So I'm getting training, and the training is helping me understand the complexity. You know, not everybody is an emotional eater. Somebody went to Italy and gained 20 pounds in her junior year abroad. The injections worked easily for her because there was no emotional basis. So she's easy. Someone broke their leg and he gained 20 pounds because he was laid up. That's not emotional. So it's easy for him. So just to take a moment, I decided as I was preparing for this that there are 3 different types of overeaters. So I want to tell you what they are because that's why this will work for some and not others. The first type of overeater is someone who has poor habits. They're not aware of what they're eating. They're mindlessly eating, as you said, sitting in front of the television, snacking. They're not aware. The second type is the diet casualties, the people who have been on diets, who have been restricted, who have been on rigid programs, and then they break out and they have to binge on everything in sight, and then they get guilty and they put themselves back on another rigid diet. That's another type. And the third type are emotional eaters who turn to the food for comfort, for coping, for sedation, for numbing, for friendship. I call it looking for love in all the wrong places. And so everybody is, as I said, unique as a fingerprint. And the value of what Bracha does, the value of what you do and what I do, is to individualize a comprehensive program for each person who is unique. That's why one dose does not fit all. One nutrition plan does not fit all. One psychotherapy method does not fit all. It's a comprehensive, individualized approach that we need to bring to each unique person.
Yeah. Thank you.
Wow. Yeah, so true.
And I will add something that I think that even it's not, my space like it is yours, but I believe that sometimes it could work that you fix the emotion and they could all of a sudden change the habit. But sometimes once you're in a certain habit, on a scientific level, once someone gains more weight, you become more insulin resistant. And the more insulin resistant you are, the harder it is to lose weight. And so your body's just holding on to that sugar more. It's not bringing the glucose down as fast. So even if you fix the emotional issue and the connection, there's still something that happens in your body at that point that's on a scientific level extremely hard to lose weight. Your body will now think that if you're eating less, it's starving and it needs to eat, trying to protect you. And so that has been developed for many, many years. Let's say you're struggling with weight for 20 years. That's developed in your body. Even if you fix the emotional aspect of it, that didn't help that aspect to it. And it's much harder to break, which is why getting a little bit of help is okay. I always use the example of someone borrowing money from the bank to buy a building. You could use all cash, or you could just use the bank's money as leverage. It doesn't make you cheating. You just get to a place faster with using some help. And that's honestly why using any sort of help, whether it's a nutritionist, a dietitian, a health coach, a trainer, an emotional eating therapist coach. Those are all different tools of help. Going on a medication is another tool to help you, but it doesn't mean that it's the answer for everything. Yeah. So let's just answer some questions that people have. This question's for you, Marianne. How do you support clients using GLP-1s without going overboard into restrictive eating and medicine-induced overeating? Not sure if you can see the question.
Medicine-induced overeating, medicine-induced.
Oh, medicine-induced eating disorders. Apologize.
Okay,
So
say that
how do you
again.
support clients using GLP-1s without going overboard into restrictive eating and medicine-induced eating disorders? I'm not fully following the question.
Well, as both you and Danielle said, it is important that people eat enough food. So not being restrictive, not being on a diet, and also becoming in touch with when you're hungry and when you're full, and separating out emotions from eating, feelings from food. This is the journey that I take people on. So it's a good question. I think I have to think about a little bit more. I didn't completely understand it. So maybe they'll ask it again in a different way. Okay.
I'll just say this question out loud. Someone asked Danielle, is it true that if someone's trying to lose body fat, they shouldn't have fruit in the morning, only at lunch? Here I see you said it's not true, but any comments on that? about?
Yeah, I see that my response is only to the host and panelists, so Tanya probably wouldn't be able to see that. But yes, that is not true. And these are just the things, you know, be very careful who you're following on social media, because oh my gosh, the things that I hear. But yeah, no, you know, if you want to lose body fat, you go into a calorie deficit, or you're burning more calories than you're eating daily. You are eating enough protein, and you are strength training, so that we can, you know, prioritize that. You know, we are losing fat and not muscle. But no, fruit is a wonderfully healthy food that is, you know, many types of fruit have fiber and vitamins and minerals. So no, I have fruit every morning with my breakfast, so please enjoy it.
Why would, so out of curiosity, why would it be a problem in the morning? Like, why was that even a question? Like, why would someone think fruits are a problem in the morning?
I'm wondering if someone is thinking, you know, if that's the only thing you're having, and, you know, blood sugar would rise. But again, you know, we hope that, you know, people are incorporating some protein, another source of fiber in the morning. But still, you know, if you are in a calorie deficit, you will lose weight. So even if you do just eat fruit for breakfast, and I got the response, he said my body would burn sugar and not fat. So no, don't believe these things. I'm not sure who told you that, but yeah, not true.
I
Not true.
love that you use the word enjoyment. You know, we forgot to mention that word during this workshop. Enjoyment. Food is
Yeah,
pleasurable.
it really is. Yeah,
Let's make sure that we're not saying food is always a problem that we have to fix, or an overweight body is a problem that we always have to fix.
so
And
true.
enjoyment is part of being human and partaking of the banquet of life.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. And I would say that, like, managing glucose spikes is very important. I think if you control your glucose and insulin level, you control your metabolic health. It's so important. But also understanding how to eat, and that's where Danielle comes in. There's so many ways. Food is art and science together. You eat the protein before you eat the carbs. Instead of just eating, let's say, the fruits alone, pair it up with yogurt or cottage cheese. Like, that together will really decrease those sugar spikes. The more sugar spikes you have, the more inflammation you have. The lower your sugar spikes, the better it is for you.
Mhm.
So that's super important to know, like, how do I decrease my sugar spikes, and what are the different things to do? One of the things I love recommending with patients where we put them on a glucose monitor before we put them on the GLP-1. So once they enter the program, we monitor their sugar for 15 days. So they're actually able to understand a little bit about how many times their sugar are spiking. A lot of times people aren't aware about the foods that they're eating and how high it spikes their sugar. So the first step would be actually to just see the data for yourself to make you more aware. As Marianne said, the first step to everything is being aware. So
Can I answer a question that just came in? It's, do
yeah.
you need to add protein because of something related to the GLP, or because you've lost so much weight, your body begins to use up the protein and deplete it? So we need to make sure that we're eating enough protein on a GLP-1, because your appetite is a little suppressed. As Braha said, it should not be completely suppressed. But if you're eating less, so on a GLP-1, you could potentially say, I'm just going to get McDonald's because I'm just going to eat less of it and I'll be fine. So you're eating less. It becomes even more important to prioritize protein, because protein and strength training, both of these are so important, because these are going to maintain your muscle mass as you're losing weight. This goes for any of my clients. We want to prioritize fat loss, not muscle loss, right? So that's why we focus so much on protein. We recommend, you know, try and prioritize your protein, eat it first within your meal if you can. Because you're going to get full quicker. So we really have to eat those foods that are going to give us the more bang for our buck. So the more nutrient dense, protein rich, fiber rich foods. So I hope that
Yeah.
answered your question.
Yeah, thank you. And to add, definitely, I mean, I think we always believe to eat protein, fiber before you eat carbs. Always dress your carbs.
Mhm.
Is that something that you believe is helpful if you eat the protein before carbs?
It can be tough, but yes, I mean, it is a recommendation, you know, if your plate has a chicken breast that, you know, we've said, okay, this is about 30 grams of protein, and we really want you to try to get 30 grams of protein per meal, then ideally, yes, you're eating that protein during the meal. But you know, as Marianne said, like we want the other, you know, we're gonna want pasta to go with it. We're gonna want rice. We're gonna want other sides that we enjoy, and that's fine. That's ideal. That's gonna make this into a lifestyle.
Yeah.
So, but just the goal is that you're incorporating foods that you like that are going to allow you to meet your protein and fiber goals.
Yeah, yeah. But does the order matter? Meaning if they
Oh,
eat
no. As long as you're
first,
getting, no. It does not. It does not. As long as you are meeting your goals for the day, as long as each meal is balanced, the order doesn't matter.
in terms of eating protein before, let's say you eat the carbs, would it help with like decreasing their sugar spikes or helping them feel full faster if they ate the protein, or if they ate the carbs and then the protein? Because sometimes when we eat the carbs, then we're not always full then we feel this instant fullness and then we don't want the protein.
Sure, right. So it just depends too, you know, are you eating quickly or are you eating slowly? Because this is another thing too. We know that people that eat slowly, you know, they, you know, recognize those fullness signals. Whereas if you're eating quickly, you might be able to just eat the whole meal and say, oh gosh, I'm overly full now. So, but no, I would say that the order does not matter. Just, you know, build that balanced plate. Eat until you're full and satisfied, but ideally you are meeting that protein goal every day.
Okay, great. Thanks. I know there's so many questions. I'm going to try answering a few here. Is there a different approach to these issues? Is there a difference how you approach these issues in different age groups? I mean, I'll answer this really quickly, but and then I'll hear from you guys. It really depends on, for sure, like for females, menopause, postmenopausal, not menopausal is completely different things that you're targeting. When you're hitting menopause, you're holding on to sugar at a much higher, faster rate. Sometimes it's not about lifestyle modifications, it's just the medications working, because menopausal weight gain something has nothing to do with your lifestyle sometimes. So does very much depend on your age. But Danielle, like in terms of nutrition, and Marianne, like if you both can give me different opinions on age differences. Or
Not
no?
really, not for me. We work with, I've worked with, I would say, a majority of perimenopausal and menopausal clients in my time as a weight management dietitian. And they often think that, oh, well, I need something different. But it's, you know, strength training, eating enough protein, all of the same things. What happens as we age is we tend to not move as much, right? You know, if the kids we're not chasing after toddlers anymore. So the key is to, okay, let's stay active, doing things that you love to do, even if that's gardening, dancing, walking the dog, whatever that might be. But we recommend, I don't want to say we recommend the same things because each person is different, but our overall goals for each member of, or each client of mine is essentially the same. Eat more protein, eat more fiber. Everyone needs to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, I'll answer one more question and then we'll wrap up. This is, someone said, I lost 30 pounds on point. It's a very specific medical question. I lost 30 pounds on 0.5 dose over a 1 year period, went off of it, gained 10 pounds, been back on it and for over 2 months on the same dose and hasn't lost any weight. Should I ask for a higher dose? So I just will answer here, that actually sometimes when you go off and you go on it, your body grows a little more tolerant to the medication. The dose that worked for you before may not work for you now, versus if you just stayed on it or gradually, you know, kept a lower dose. it's important to be with a nurse practitioner or a medical provider dosing you on these things, because when you kind of guess and you just go off of it and then try to go back on it, the same dose might not work for you anymore. You're going to have to go to a higher dose to maintain or to reach the same level of that weight loss. So there's a window of opportunity that happens when you're on it the first time. And so you need to manage it correctly. Okay. Marianne, is there anything you want to add? Final words?
I love the word enjoyment. I just want to put that word out there again. I want to put the word out there that, we're all doing our best, and this GLP-1 is a fantastic tool to help us feel better about ourselves. I love this Mark Twain quote: "The worst loneliness is not to feel comfortable with yourself." And many people who feel like they're cheating need to know that part of enjoyment is being comfortable with yourself, and it's okay. And whatever helping hands we can get in life, good for us. Life is tough.
Mhm.
Let's take all the help we can get. Yeah.
Mhm. Danielle, did you want to add any last tips?
Yeah, I just want my clients and members, patients that work with me to understand that I am open and sympathetic to whatever is going to work for them. I've had a couple of members in my program who came to me after our Instagram Live, Braha, and said, well, I didn't want to admit it to you, but I'm on a GLP-1. And I said, oh my gosh, you're in my program and you didn't tell me this. So it's something that as practitioners, we've learned, as dietitians, we've learned to be sympathetic, as I mentioned earlier, and have empathy. And anyone that works with me, I want them to realize that I understand that it's not a one size fits all. What works for you might not work for someone else, and I'm always going to be sympathetic to that.
Amen.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Appreciate
Thank
everyone.
you. This was great.
Thank you. And
Great
we'll
to be
be,
with both of you.
this is
Thanks.
recorded. We'll be emailing it to everyone.
All right.
Okay.
Have a
Good
nice
night.
evening.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.